When you hear the name Trafalgar D Water Law, what do you think of? You might simply think of the two wars involving Napoleon, the Battle of Trafalgar and the Battle of Waterloo. However, I believe that his name has another hidden meaning, especially in the water part. Additionally, let's take a look at a sentence from Law. My family for generations. Law was trying to say something important about his family, but the conversation was interrupted by two idiots. So in this video, I would like to analyze the true meaning of Law's name with knowledge of the original language. First of all, let me present my conclusions. I think that his family, Trafalgar D Water, inherited an important role since the times of the Void Century. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Dawn Dusk. On this channel, I always share theories and analyses on One Piece from the perspective of the original language. Because in the latest chapters, we can find many clues from Oda Sensei by reading the original version. So if you're not already subscribed, you're always welcome. Let's become Nakama beyond borders. If we reach 1000 subscribers, I would like to start a new project through this channel. First, let's look at the meaning behind Law's name that is often found on the web. Trafalgar D Water Law. The battles of Trafalgar and Waterloo led to the downfall of Napoleon. The Battle of Trafalgar confirmed British naval supremacy during the Napoleonic Wars and broke any future French invasion plans. Waterloo's defeat also marked the end of Napoleon's reign as Emperor of the French and put an end to his 100 days of return from exile. In fact, Law defeats Napoleon. So I think Law could be a key character in defeating Emu. Do you know where Emu comes from? Emu is a character that contains many elements representing France. Now, you may think I'm a crazy satellite, but according to Stella, a Japanese native speaker, we can obtain an important clue to prove this theory through the name Emu. Let me show you some examples. The name Emu seems to correspond to another kanji hotoke which represents France and Japan. Additionally, as I explained in this video, we can read the number 16 as Emu. It's evident that this number is important to the world government in the world of One Piece. In chapter 594, Brand New mentions the ox bell and says that Monkey D. Luffy rang the ox bell at the western border 16 times. Then Killer says that ringing 16 times is a tradition of the Marines. In chapter 763, in Doflamingo's flashback, a man says my children were only 2 and 5 years old. Just because they had the misfortune of crossing the path of a celestial dragon, they were shot 16 times and killed on the spot. In chapter 790, we saw Doflamingo's final move, which was a celestial dragon called the 16 Holy Bullets God Thread. Furthermore, in chapter 1060, what can we notice? Emu Summer launches an attack called the Emu Summer Shot. And we've already noticed something important in this scene. Let's count the number of beams. Yes, there are 16. So the number 16 represents the world government and Emu. And when Emu is converted into kanji, it becomes France. Additionally, the pattern of Maria Joa is likely the Chambord Castle in France. So what could be the key to overthrowing the world government with French elements? Perhaps Law, with the names of the battles of Trafalgar and Waterloo that defeated Napoleon. In fact, Doflamingo tells Law, the day I get my hands on the Opope fruit's powers, I'll use Maria Joa's national treasure to gain dominion over the world. In other words, his Opope ability may be necessary to conquer the world, and it will likely be necessary to defeat the current system of government. So I think Law will still have an important role in the rest of the story even if he loses to Blackbeard. This was the perspective on his war-related names, and his Opope power, but now let's look at this part of his name, Water. In chapter 763, Law says, D is my hidden name, while Water is my imina. My family from generation to generation. Kakushina means secret name. But instead, imina has various meanings in Japan, so its exact meaning in the world of One Piece is not clear. Additionally, As mentioned earlier, let's look at another phrase, my family from generation to generation. This word imana implies that his family plays an important role. So I think this imana is a hint in this context. In Japan, among the society of samurai, a fixed imana was assigned to each family. Imana is used as people's real name, but I was reluctant to call it during their lifetime. In other words, it was used as a title to honor a person after their death. Furthermore, since we're talking about order sensei, there's a high chance he's also playing with words. The word imana was created by combining a verb and a noun. The verb imu means to hate or to avoid as something menacing from magical beliefs, etc. While the noun na means name. Therefore, imana means the name to avoid saying. That's why law says the name he shouldn't have told people. Additionally, this verb imu is pronounced imu. In other words, this imana water could also imply imu. It could be a name that shouldn't be known to imu. Therefore, their role as water could be to inherit something without being noticed by imu. But why does the verb imu become imi with a noun? I also give Japanese private lessons, so if you're interested, let me know via Gmail or Instagram message. So, what is the true role of water? In the original version, it's written as Wairo. If you study Japanese, you might notice a word that order has hidden similarly. Rafutaru. The true meaning of this word is laugh tail. However, Wairo in Japanese does not mean water. But you could change this letter with the English alphabet and get war tale, which means a story of war. Therefore, the true role of the Wairo family could be to tell the story of the war that happened in the Void Century. Anyway, I want you to remember Law's hometown, Florence. Do you remember the characteristics of his city? According to Gradius, Florence looked like something out of a fable, with white terrain and plants that looked like they were covered in snow. One day they dug and found a type of lead called amber lead that made everything so magical. There may be a connection with the fact that when Luffy transforms into Nika, his entire body becomes white. Additionally, the Sun Cross can be found in Florence. Throughout the entire story of One Piece, it has been implied that there is a close relationship between the Sun Cross and the Sun God. So Florence could be a city linked to Nika or Joy Boy. Therefore, there is a possibility that someone in Florence noticed something important about the Void Century or Nika. 100 years ago, the world government may have tried to infect people with amber lead syndrome and wipe out the entire city. This may have been the light that Imu designated to extinguish. Furthermore, we must keep in mind that Law reacted significantly when he heard the phrase "a man with a scar of fire." This water imana could explain it.